Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I want to talk about when drive changes in midlife, the psychology of ambition in gay men over 50. After more than 3 decades as a psychotherapist and coach specializing in gay men's mental health, I've observed a recurring developmental transition among accomplished men in midlife and later life. Many reach their late 50s, early 60s, having built careers and relationships and financial stability, only to discover that the drive which once propelled them forward begins to change. So today, this explores the psychological, emotional, and cultural dimensions of that shift and how gay men can navigate it in a grounded, healthy, and meaningful way. There's a moment that arrives quietly for successful gay men, often in their late 50s or early 60s. But with some of these developmental things I see with my clients over the years, you can kind of give or take a few years. So sometimes the feelings you can set your watch by them. You really see vivid developmental changes at the same ages. And once in a while, though, somebody can feel these things earlier or later. So maybe if you're younger than the late 50s or early 60s, you still might relate to this. But that moment just arrives when something begins to feel different. The developmental changes are ways that we feel different that kind of come out of nowhere, but it has to do with just aging. And you're still capable and respected and still functioning at a high level, certainly not retired yet, necessarily, but that drive, that young man's fire in your belly drive that once propelled you forward, the urgency to achieve and to build and to prove, no longer feels the same. There's a moment that just kind of is not marked by some kind of crisis or catastrophe or some big drama. Nothing like that's necessarily happened. But from the outside, while life may appear stable, even enviable, and your career has been built, financial security may finally feel possible, relatively speaking. Friendships, partnerships, and personal identity have taken shape over decades of effort. Yet internally, something begins to shift. The drive that once felt natural, even essential, begins to soften. The urgency to prove yourself, to compete, to achieve the next milestone or secure the next level of recognition no longer carries the same emotional intensity. Many men experience this stage with confusion or self-criticism or even fear. They may ask themselves whether they're becoming depressed or losing their edge or somehow failing to live up to their own expectations. In reality, what they're often experiencing is not a failure of motivation, but a developmental transition. Understanding the psychology of this shift can help transform anxiety into clarity and open the door to a more intentional, sustainable next chapter for you. Let's talk about how to recognize this shift in yourself. One useful way to think about this experience is through the clinical framework that I often use in practice, where we look at the type, the frequency, the intensity, and the duration of symptoms. This would be true with any kind of psychological or psychiatric phenomenon. It's also a medical way of looking at symptoms. And I use that framework a lot because it helps guys have an overview understanding of what's going on with them. And then, such as with therapy or coaching clients, we make a plan for addressing your symptoms. So in this case, when we look at the type of symptom, is it truly a loss of ambition, or is it a shift in what feels meaningful to you at this stage of your life and career? The frequency, does this feeling come and go, or is it showing up more consistently over time, where it's happening in little pangs in your stomach often enough that you notice a pattern of feeling this way? Intensity, is it just a mild reduction in drive, or a deeper questioning of purpose and relevance or identity? And that can feel like burnout, but it may be a type of change that's less negative than a burnout feeling, and maybe it's just more of a developmental shift. Or the duration. Has this been a temporary reaction to a stressful event or burnout, especially with a recent onset stressful acute experience, or does it reflect a more sustained developmental change over recent times? And these questions don't answer everything, but they can help distinguish a later life transition from a more acute condition like depression or exhaustion or demoralization. For many men, what they are experiencing is not simply pathology, it's a psychological developmental reorganization that deserves just reflection, not panic. Let's talk a little bit about ambition as identity in gay male development. For many gay men, ambition has never been merely about professional success. It's functioned as a survival strategy and a pathway towards self-respect. In earlier life stages, ambition often serves multiple psychological purposes for gay men. It can help counter early experiences of rejection or invisibility or devaluation of gay men. It supports financial independence. There's a great empowerment that can come when you've got mad money, financial independence. It builds a social credibility, and it fosters a sense of masculine competence. It can provide structure, direction, and meaning in a world where gay men may have felt marginalized or uncertain about their place in society or in the greater economy. Ambition has often represented discipline and self-control, the pursuit of stability and security, a pathway out of shame or early life vulnerability, a means of building desirability and social status, including competing with other gay men or even straight men. And we all know that both gay men and straight men compete among themselves and with each other as groups. A structure for organizing adult identity. Who am I now as an adult when I'm no longer hampered by being less than as the dismissed gay kid, the fat kid, the shy kid, the skinny kid, or the brainiac kid, or some other oppressive stereotyping role that was kind of put on us but isn't really the real us, at least not entirely. Gay men often have this kind of ugly duckling swan story where they kind of come into their own, maybe after high school or after college, where they work out and they get the good body or they get the good job and they climb the ladder. And a lot of gay men who are in adulthood, especially by middle age, they've really overcome any kind of oppression early in life, like being bullied or oppressed, and really have made a space for themselves. And ambition often fuels that and drive. And so when ambition functions at this level, it becomes deeply intertwined with cultivating our sense of self, our adult identity. So therefore, when it begins to change at a certain time of life as we get older, that experience can feel disorienting. Many gay men fear that if they no longer are striving in the same way that they always have as young adults, that they may be losing relevance or purpose. Let's talk about the biological and emotional changes in later life. This transition is not purely psychological. There are also biological shifts that occur with aging. As gay men move into midlife or into their 50s or 60s, the nervous system often recalibrates its response to achievement and stress. Activities that once felt energizing may begin to feel draining. Recovery from intense work may take longer, which is why we might appreciate weekends away or maybe at a second home if we can manage that, or more leisure travel if we can manage that, or just more time to chill at home on weekends between work weeks. At this stage, emotional rewards shift toward autonomy and meaning and depth rather than expansion and competition. So common changes here can include a reduced dopamine response to external achievement. We're less of adrenaline and dopamine junkies as we age. There might be a greater sensitivity to chronic stress or overwork, where you're just like, I'm over it. You reach that point sooner. An increased desire for control over schedule and lifestyle. You just want more autonomy. You get a little tired of working for the man all the time. You kind of want control over your own dominion. That's kind of a feeling that guys move toward retirement. And there's a growing interest just naturally in purpose or legacy and personal meaning. It's a time when my husband, who works in philanthropy and fundraising for a college, when all people, but we'll just look at gay men, might have a growing interest in leaving a legacy behind them. Particularly if we don't have kids, we may be interested in saying, what is the legacy? What will endure after I'm gone? And those things start to take on meaning really the older you get. And these are not signs of decline. They just represent a natural evolution in psychological priorities in developmental stages across the lifespan, which is something I work with a lot in gay men's mental health. Let's talk about when ambition functioned as emotional protection. For many high-achieving gay men, ambition also functioned as a defense against deeper fears. The pursuit of success may have helped manage anxieties related to poverty. As God is my witness, I'll never be hungry again, as Scarlett O'Hara said. So we're trying to make damn sure that through achievement and ambition, we're buying an insurance policy against the kind of frustrations and poverty that maybe we experienced in our family of origin. Or the pursuit of success might help manage anxiety related to social rejection or loneliness, or even aging itself. The more we do, the more we feel like we're still a part of the process. And it provided momentum and distraction, along with doing things that get us admiration or social validation, winning awards or getting promotions or getting attention or receiving credit. So when ambition begins to soften, the feelings it once protected against can re-emerge. And this can lead to a powerful urge to work harder or maintain a relentless pace, even when energy reserves are starting to decline. So recognizing this pattern in yourself can be very liberating, because it allows gay men to consider that the task at this stage may not be to push harder, but to integrate the emotional experiences that ambition once helped them avoid. Let's talk about collapse versus integration. Letting go of relentless striving can unfold in two very different ways. In some cases, men may experience a sense of collapse characterized by apathy, withdrawal, loss of structure, even maybe a little bit of hopelessness or helplessness. And in other cases, they move toward integration, a more mature form of engagement that emphasizes selectivity, emotional wisdom, and values-driven choices. So that integration often includes choosing meaningful work over constant productivity, or mentoring younger professionals or peers, being the elder statesman that serves as a mentor to those coming up behind us, especially in the same field. Enjoying life outside of career achievement. Who am I if I'm not what my title says on my resume or on my office door or on my business card? Who am I? And that's also part of retirement, is if you didn't have your work anymore, then what are you left with? Who are you if you're not senior vice president of marketing or whatever? And developing a more humane and sustainable pace, just being a little nicer to yourself, a little easier on yourself than this kind of go, go, go drive. And that stage is not about disengaging from life, but it's instead redefining what engagement looks like. Let's talk about the grief that often accompanies this transition. Few men speak openly about the grief that can accompany later life. There may be Grief for the younger self who believed that opportunities would continue expanding indefinitely. There may be grief for the peak years of physical vitality or desirability in a culture, like among gay men, that often celebrates youth. There may also be a sadness about dreams that were never fully realized. Ambition once whispered to us that there was still time for everything. Later life asks a more focused question of what truly matters now. What's often missed is that this grief is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of psychological awareness. You're recognizing limits that were once abstract, but they're now real. Limits in time, energy, money, opportunity, even identity. Many men try to just bypass this grief by doubling down, working harder, pursuing new goals, or trying to recreate earlier versions of themselves to turn back time, as Cher would say, through workouts or cosmetic surgery or whatever. But this tends to intensify anxiety rather than resolve it. The work at this stage is not to outrun grief, but to allow it and name it and metabolize it. So a more constructive approach might include differentiating regret from reality. Not every unrealized path or unmet goal or dream represents a life mistake. What did I do wrong in my life? It's not about that, because some paths were never truly aligned with who you were or what was possible at the time. Another constructive approach idea might be identifying what is still alive. Even if it's true that certain doors are closed to you now, you're not going to go run off and be a firefighter when you're 54. It's just, no, they don't accept that. But other doors remain open. And so the question shifts from what did I miss in life to what still has energy and meaning for me right now. It's allowing mixed emotions. Gratitude and grief often coexist. You can feel proud of your life and still mourn aspects of it. There's talking about it. Many men carry this privately, which intensifies the sense of isolation about it. Naming it with a therapist or a coach or any trusted person often reduces the weight significantly. It gets it off your chest. So grief in this context is not something to just get over it. It's about something to integrate so that your next chapter is built on clarity rather than avoidance. Let's talk about from visibility to authority. Gay male culture can intensify fears about aging and relevance. Many men worry about becoming invisible or replaced by younger competitors, either professionally in their field or just in the workforce in general, or socially, like younger guys in the bar or a club or an event. And yet, later life often brings a shift from visibility to authority, from needing attention to embodying presence. Experience and perspective become valuable assets that can deepen relationships and professional impact. The difficulty is that this shift is not automatic. Many men continue to measure their value using the metrics that were relevant earlier in life: attractiveness, attention, social desirability, external validation. When those metrics inevitably shift over time, it can feel like a loss of identity. Authority, however, operates by a different set of rules. Authority is not about being the most visible person in the room or the most attractive person in the room. It's about being the most grounded, the most thoughtful, and often the most selective. It's built on accumulated experience, pattern recognition, emotional steadiness. So in order to move from visibility to authority, consider this: where your experience has depth. What have you lived and learned and worked through and endured that younger men have not yet encountered? How you show up in relationships. Authority is often expressed through calmness and clarity and the ability to tolerate complexity, not through dominance or performance. Your willingness to mentor or guide. Many men feel renewed meaning in supporting others, not from a superior position, but from a place of an earned perspective over many years of effort and frustration and reward and troubleshooting and lived observation and experience. Letting go of comparison. Competing with younger men on youth-based metrics is a losing game. Authority comes from playing a different game altogether. So when this shift is embraced, many men report feeling more solid, less reactive, and more internally anchored than at any earlier stage of life. This is why later stages of life, from midlife on, is not just all about loss and despair, but it's about achieving a new state. You are less reactive. You're a little bit not tuned out, but you're a little bit immune to just everyday ups and downs. You have more rock solid perspective in the later years. So rather than seeing all of this as a loss of ambition, it may be more accurate to see it as a refinement of ambition. Earlier life emphasized expansion, more. Later life emphasizes curation. This might involve fewer overall commitments or deeper but fewer relationships, greater autonomy to really call the shots and do what you want, and a much more intentional pace. It's fast when you want it to be fast, but it's also slower when you want it to be slower. You're not just being dragged and driven by your field or the workforce or social dynamics. And one of the most important psychological tasks at this stage is learning to choose rather than accumulate. In earlier life, saying yes often led to growth. In later life, saying yes indiscriminately often leads to depletion or exhaustion. So a more refined form of ambition might include fewer goals, but more meaningful ones to you, a focus on sustainability rather than intensity, greater alignment between your daily life of what goes on and your core values, and a willingness finally to let go of roles that no longer fit you. And it's not about lowering standards, it's about raising the quality of what you choose to engage in. And many men find that when they shift from expansion to curation, they experience a quieter but more endurable sense of satisfaction, one that's less dependent on constant achievement. Let's look at Erikson's perspective on later adulthood. The psychologist and author Erik Erikson described later adulthood as a movement toward ego integrity rather than despair. And what this means is it involves reflecting on your life with acceptance and finding meaning in contribution rather than competition. Ambition may have built the structure of one's life, working hard and dog eat dog and rah, rah, rah. The task now becomes learning how to live fully within that structure. You built your house. Now you live in it. Ego integrity does not mean believing that everything went perfectly. It means developing the capacity to say, in effect, this was my life. It was imperfect, but it was real, and I can accept that. Despair, on the other hand, often arises when men remain psychologically stuck in comparison, measuring their lives about what might have been, even for themselves, or against others who seem to have somehow achieved more money, bigger, more things, more toys, what? Moving toward integrity often involves revisiting your life story with greater compassion, going easy on yourself, not beating yourself up for what you did or didn't do. It's recognizing the constraints that you were operating under at different stages. For most of us, if we didn't achieve something, I don't think in most cases it was just plain laziness. I think you just have to recognize the constraints that you were operating under at that time. You did the best you could at every stage of life with the information that you had at the time, or the opportunities or the resources. acknowledging both accomplishments and limitations without distortion. You had real accomplishments to be proud of, but you also had limitations that you just kind of had to accept, and without translating those into, and therefore I am a bad person. In cognitive therapy, people get in real trouble when they start saying, and therefore. I made a mistake, and therefore I am worthless. I did something I shouldn't have, therefore I am a complete fuck up. It doesn't work that way. You have to look at accomplishments and limitations with a mature perspective and keep them rooted in reality. And you're shifting from what did I get to what did I contribute? I had a Jewish client not too long ago talk about a Jewish concept called tikkun olam, probably butchering the Hebrew, sorry on that, but it's basically the concept that Jews believe about leaving the world a better place than you found it in. And I really love that because I've really tried to do that with my career, and I think we all do it in some way, because when you think about, have you ever seen real old pictures of a bustling street in the early 20th century or the late 19th century? You look around at all these people on the street, they're all dead. They're all dead, no matter where they were going that day, no matter what kind of rat race they were running in, wouldn't it matter, you know? They made the contribution that they could at the time. They were part of a time and place. And hopefully we appreciate everything from the great, like the famous who wrote things and invented things and all that. But also, I think maybe even more so, the people that never were famous, the people that are not in the history books or whose names we don't know from the 19th century anymore, or a lot of the 20th century. But the people who just made an everyday contribution. I made the world work as a result of my being in it, and to take a quiet pride in that. So the shift toward that kind of integrity can be subtle, but it's profound, and it allows for a sense of completion and coherence of the things that we've been through, rather than an ongoing internal conflict. Let's try a little reflection exercise before we stop. Imagine waking up at age 65 with reasonable financial stability and a selective work schedule. Consider how you would want your days to feel. What pace would be sustainable? Which relationships would deserve more attention? What forms of contribution from you would be meaningful for you? And these questions can help shift focus from achievement to inhabitation of these life periods. To deepen this exercise, let's make it a little more concrete. Map out a typical day. What time do you wake up? What fills your morning and your afternoon and your evening? What would be rewarding to you in that typical day? Identify the energies, not the activity. Which parts of the day feel energizing and which might feel draining? Clarify relational priorities. Who are the 3 to 5 people you would want consistent contact with, and what would that contact look like? Define the contribution that you want to be making around that age. Are you teaching or mentoring? Are you creating something? Are you advising someone, an individual or an organization? Or are you simply just being present in your existing roles as a dog dad, as an athlete, as an author? So you can even write out this as a one-page future day document. Many men find that this exercise reveals a life that you're working toward that is simpler, more relational, and more intentional than the one that they're currently living, where it's all about the rat race. And the goal is not to create some kind of idyllic fantasy, but it's to begin identifying what is already psychologically true for you now, even if your external life hasn't caught up yet. So this is all not a problem that resolves through willpower alone. It's a developmental transition that benefits from thought and being thought through carefully with someone who understands both the psychology and the cultural context of gay men's lives. So if you are a gay man navigating midlife or later transitions, feeling tired of the hustle but not sure how to recalibrate, psychotherapy for the guys who are eligible for that, in my case in California where I'm licensed to do therapy, or coaching, which can be really anywhere, other states, other countries, can provide a structured and thoughtful space to work through these changes that you're going through. And this kind of work is not about abandoning ambition entirely. It's not about throwing in the towel or being put out to pasture. It's just about refining it according to your value system so that your time, energy, and money and attention are aligned with the values of what actually matters at this stage of your life, as opposed to maybe other stages of your life that might come before it or after it. So you can learn more about psychotherapy services with me at gaytherapyla.com, my website, or my coaching services at gaycoachingla.com. See what I did there? And if all this resonates with you, I just invite you to reach out, schedule your free 15-minute consultation, and we will go from there. If you see this posted in areas where there is a comment section, then feel free to comment and share or whatever. If you have questions on this, feel free to reach out. Call 310-339-5778. That's 310-339-5778. Or email me, ken@gaytherapyla.com, and that will reach me. So I hope this helps. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.
Great savings are in store for you at Albertsons and Vons. Right now at Albertsons and Vons, Lucerne butter, 16 ounces, or C&H pure cane sugar in a 4-pound bag are $2.99 each with membership where applicable. Limit 4 total. And Signature Select half ham bone-in is $1.67 per pound with membership where applicable. Limit 1 ham. Plus, a 1-pound pack of strawberries is $1.99 with digital coupon. Hurry in, these deals won't last. Visit Vons or Albertsons.com for more deals and ways to save.